This is a model that I've just finished connecting up. It's been approved and I'm going to do the fabrication drawings. A friend of mine who's making the transition from Strucad to Tekla has just asked me some advice on numbering and naming and stuff. So I thought I'd use this as an example of how I do it. Secondary steel, I approach primary steel like large structural subjects in a different way, but typically this is kind of work that I do quite a lot of. So one of the things that I need to do is go around the model, check all the part numbers, that the assembly and part prefixes and numbering the same. Everything is named in a way that I prefer, material grades and the finish basically. So the first thing that I do when I'm modelling is I put everything for this kind of work in phases. Now these aren't issue phases, these just make it simpler for me to filter out various items. So for instance, your hot rolled is in phase 1. If you set up part and bolt phase, you will only see the bolts and parts that are in that phase. Such as this. One of the first things I want to do is just go around and make sure everything's actually connected. Now there's several ways of doing this. It's quite a small job, so for the sake of this job I would probably do Hold Shift and Alt down and select each assembly. You'll notice I'm not picking the orange assemblies, and that's intentional because they're what I call a loose assembly, i.e. there's no welded parts on them, and I put them in class 13, which tells me that they're loose assemblies at a glance. If I hide them now, I shouldn't see anything other than bolts and the loose bracings, which is correct. Okay, so there's other ways of checking bigger models. I won't do that for a bigger model, it's too long-winded. So I'm just going to remove that from the assembly. Yep. So now that should be part. Obviously you've got the inquire assembled objects tool as well if you want to use that. Obviously you can only pick one item at a time. While we've been discussing these being in class 13, as far as classes go, I tend to only use class 1 through to 14, and I avoid class 6, which is yellow, for the simple reason is it confuses that command, and I only use class 2 if I've got a query against something, class 2 being red. Anything that's loose, like plates and braces, I tend to put in class 13. Plates and flats, should I say, I tend to put in class 13. I'll pick whatever colour I'm not using for any other thing, so such as, if I just turn on the balustrade, is that right? Balustrade, class 2, phase 2, sorry. Bugger. All these posts except for one, these are all loose assemblies. I use the attach part tools to make these ball and stick handrails. So the reason we do that is because the guys that are making these don't need 1, 2, 3, 4. They don't need 5 parts on their bill of material on their drawings. They just want to see the post, and they make it from all their standard parts. So unless the palm plates are weirdos, like triangular or the square with 4 holes in, typically I make it all as one unit. Right, this post here is in blue, and the reason that one's in blue is because it's got these tab plates welded to it, so that becomes a welded assembly. This kick flat here, you'll notice, isn't in orange, and that's because it's got this little return on it. Generally, for columns, beams, etc., I just use, like I say, any of those colours between classes 1 through to 14. Now that's something else that I do. It just shows me where I put my splits in. I've just used 2 different blues, class 4 and class 14, I think, class 11, sorry. That just shows me at a glance where they are, where they're jointed. Also, if I send this off as a BIM model for a client to look at, he can see clearly where I put joints in. This gate also, it's just a standard part, so that's just made from using the attach parts command. Now generally, when I'm putting components together, quick way to bring a component up instead of turning all your components on is to delete that and undo, and your component will come up. So when they come up, I tend to put all my plates in class 8, and it's just a quick way for me to see them. They look better in the presentation. And the reason that I do that is because I tend to put all my dummy stuff in class 99 or class 1, and both are light grey, which means if I've got plates attached to dummy stuff, I can see them at a glance. Once I've collected base plates, I will tend to put the grout into the dummy phase. So dummy, if I do objects by phase, you'll see that all the grout is highlighted, and the reason for that is it just saves it creating a drawing. I can just drop a window around that once I've numbered up and everything, and it'll just create those drawings for those parts, and don't create one for grout just for you to delete. Simplifies things. So I'll just switch on the filters again, class 1 and class 2. In fact, we'll do class 1 first. No, not actually. We'll have all the steelwork on. The first thing that I do is set the finish. So this is my entire model. The grating I just model in as a plate. I put a 10mm bar in to show the direction of the bearer bars, and use the attach part tool so it becomes part of it. You don't want that appearing on your bill of material. And what that does is, if you've got like notches and stuff, it just clarifies when you open your drawing up. You'll see if it's a dotted line, you know that the walking face is on the far side of your drawing view, and you can correct or note up as applicable. And that's the reason that I do them. It can make numbering a little bit messy, because when you start shoveling stuff around, you only need one of these to be slightly moved out of position when you're stretching stuff, and it becomes a different part. So that's the negative of doing that. But because I'm aware of it, I've got pretty much quite a decent control of that. At the end of the day, if I've had to mess a lot of panels around, if you just do just delete that, undo it, delete that. If in any doubt, delete, undo, copy, just copy it back onto that part, and it'll go back into the same position as this one. Right, so that's ready for going. When I'm modelling, I don't tend to worry too much about the numbers. Now this is quite a small model, so why are we not so, there we go. This is quite a small model, so everything's pretty much numbered up as I wanted to, but even if it wasn't, as I'm going along, I don't get too bogged down by making sure that everything has got its correct prefixes and start numbers while I'm modelling, because it's something that I do by sweeping the model and selecting certain components, and this is part of what we're doing now. This is a modelled in by hand. Tekla doesn't seem to like flat or angle braces, only seems to recognise structural tube braces. Now drop a window around here, pick a beam, not a column. If you pick a column, you'll find that if you modify anything, it'll only change the columns, it won't do the beams, whereas if you pick a beam, it will modify the columns as well. So switch all your ticks off, put your finish in, galvanised, in capitals, galvanised, and modify. So I now know that everything has got that finish. So go into our, in fact, this is the easiest way to do it. Just go into here, grating, objects by phase, hold your shift button down, show only selected. Right, so these are each one, there's no kit flats welded to them, there's a couple here notching, but other than that they're just rectangular panels. So we'll get them out of the way first, and double click on one, 275, that's near enough. I put this in because that will appear on your on lists. Actually generally I don't tend to bother putting that in. Putting hyphens in between means that when you're creating filters and things, you don't need to bother putting speech marks around and stuff. Right, so for grating, typically for my non-Tekla users that aren't that fussed about the numbering, some drawing offices or some companies, they have their own set way of numbering stuff, which obviously you have to adhere to. But if you give them free rein, this is what I tend to do. GRX 100, GR1, that's it, and that's all that needs to be. Turn all my ticks off. That's important, that's important, that's important, that is. Don't have that click because it's different sizes. This is just making sure that everything's got the same properties, and modify, redrop. And we'll do the same with balustrade, get that one done as well, that's the easiest one. Contract each, balustrade, objects, properties, and show only selected. Kick flats, we've got these orange kick flats. If you want to do it by class, obviously you class or name, just set up your filter part name, part class equals, select from a model, class 13, apply. Oh, nobody bother doing that for this size job. So that just brings them up. Again, they're called kick flat. There's no hyphen there, so if I just show you this, Control G, class name equals, get rid of that, apply. Right, so to select part, if I would just copy and paste that into there, because there's no hyphen between the kick and the flat, apply, that selection filter doesn't work, it's not selecting anything except for bolts. Another way to do it is, if you've not bothered putting hyphens in between, is just select from model, oops, excuse me, apply, select from model, and as you can see it puts a couple of apostrophes or speech marks around the word, and that allows it to work. So drop that around there, keep that, there you go. So back to how we're numbering them, and that's what we want, B100. Doesn't really matter if you make that SF1, because the way Tekla's set up, this Tekla's set up, anything without a welded part to it, the single part mark should be the same as the assembly mark anyway. So put in whatever you want for there, to be honest. But SF1 is, my customers will recognise that that's a loose plate or a loose flat. Everything else has been set up. Kick flat, name, grey is correct, galvanised, modify, apply, and hide. I've got left on here, so we've got this kick flat here which has got a welded part to it. So I'll go to standard. That's your quickest way to get your selection filter up is to do Control G, and that will bring up your object group selection filter. Should have said that really. So we've got that. So that's P. Still want it to be. We want that to be kick flat for one. That is because that's the added part. This is the main part, and that's the secondary part. Put that in as X999, and the reason for that is when I create drawings, anything that's got an X prefix to it, I know it's probably a loose floating part. So kick flat, blah 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 blah. Everything seems okay on that one. The gate. The gate is pretty much like it's made by a specialist, so I class it as a bought-in item, which is why I call it a BT or a BTX. It'll be numbered as BT. You won't see BTX on any of your lists. It's a gate. That blah blah blah. That's fine. Like that. Hold your shift button down to make sure that the whole thing goes, otherwise you'll be left with wireframe for it. And we've got the post to the left, that's done. Like that. Oops, let's rotate this around slightly. Select all these posts, set for that one there. In fact, we'll have that one as well. And we are columns. So untick everything. And we're going to call B for ballast. Baluster. 100. Galvanized. H2J. Modify. Hide. And that leaves us with tubes. HRX 100, HR1, balustrade, or handrail, whatever, name it whatever you want. Grey is correct. Modify. Hide. That just leaves us with these two plates. Now these two plates should come with the gate. So they're a bit of an odd one. They're already done up, that's fine. They'll come up on the drawing for that post as BTX1. Modify. Hide. So that's everything in that phase done. So that just leaves phase 1 now. go phase 1, modify, get rid of all this lot. Right, so I could quite easily just go and select everything that I wanted for this, but the way I treat a bigger job is to Control G, bring this up, part name, part profile equals, and then you just put all your possible hot rod sections in, like UB star, UC star, and by putting the star after, you don't have to worry about what the actual section size is. You're basically just telling it to look for any UB, any UC, any PFC star, and any RSA star. Any hot roll that I've got in there, that's what we're going to have. Apply that. Right. Showing selected. Switch just the parts on. Again, could have done this slightly differently, but there's only a handful of columns in here. And we want them to be S100, C for column 1, name says column, tick, tick, and just to make sure that they all say the same. Modify and hide, and anything else is going to be beam. It's going to be S100 B1, B275 for PFCs and RSAs. It's going to be galvanized, class 10, modify. I just need to call that angle, which is what it's got in there. Modify, hide. Modify, redraw, and reopen the Control G, class equals 8, and the only thing that should be in class 8 is plate fittings. So show all, show only selected, hold your shift button down to collect that up, click a plate, an horizontal one, and it's a plate, class 100, and I'll say X999, and I'll display in a minute. If you recall, I unattached a plate from one of the columns. That don't really matter, to be honest. You could have any, that could be empty, you don't need to put anything in there because the main part takes that on, so it doesn't matter if all them are blank. Blah blah blah, bang. Right. And redraw the model. So there we have the model. I'm going to turn back on Control G. I'm going to turn on, view filter. Does not equal 99. There are no bolts in. There are no bolts in class 99, phase 99. And the next thing, actually, I'm just going to slightly change that. Just turn that off a second, switch everything on, and class this as my first numbering. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into my drawing settings, I'm going to number, and I'm going to clear all part and assembly numbers. Okay. Going into my number settings, for some jobs I use these here, which is sort by ascending, and basically it just numbers everything from ground up. I don't use it all the time, I just use it occasionally for whatever job it suits. You want to reuse old numbers, check for standard parts, ticked, compare roles, compare part name. Don't compare beam orientation and column orientation, otherwise it'll give give different numbers unnecessarily, which it does anyway, but that just reduces that. So that's okay, like that, okay, and number up the model. I'm not even going to look at that, although we'll be looking for that and that one there. Look, they should flag up elsewhere. So the next thing that I would do is to create the assembly drawings. So create from selected, and create a single, create from selected. Another tip for Tekla, keep your sounds on. When you're copying bolts, if a bolt fails, you'll get a ping. If you haven't got your sounds on, you're not always sure it's actually gone through the plies. There, collected. Oh, and we'll go down here. Looking for stuff that don't seem to make any sense. That's those lifting, that's those gate lugs. That's HRX is that loose, that's that baluster. Careful. There they are, look. These two here. Right, select object. And basically that is now being regarded as a loose assembly, which is why it's created an assembly and a single part drawing. So that's the plate that I unwelded earlier. I'm going to re-weld that to that now, which requires a renumbering. And there's a couple of things I'm hoping to see here. Save numbers. So just highlight those two to start with. They're going to be deleted. So delete. Yes, plate has increased, which I'm expecting it to do, and I'm also expecting the columns to have changed. Now that column is going to disappear, and that one has increased in number. So update that column and delete that. And now that column should match the rest. So that's it all numbered up, and that's pretty much how I check my, well, one of the ways I check them all. There's several ways of checking it, but once I've done that, the next thing I would do down here is these SFs, and the reason that wherever you see this here, if you set your view by mark, and as I'm going down it, I can see that you've got that and that, that and that. So you don't need these drawings because basically it's a replicant. My old version of this, I'm pretty sure it's a long time ago, but my old version of this refused to draw a single part drawing for loose assemblies. But I had a new firm folder a few years back and I seem to have lost it. And I've tried asking Tekla how to set it up, and they're like, oh, we don't know anything about it. Well, that's pretty much because they're useless. I'm not going to delete these drawings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lock them. And the reason I lock them is on a bigger job, when you've got a lot more drawings, you might find stuff that you need to correct as you're going along, and you lose parts. So I would do a final sweep of the drawing and tell it to create assembly drawings and create single part drawings, and then what I would do is edit first and put a freeze on all my drawings, and then any new drawings that appeared, any parts that have been missed during corrections, will show up as an unfrozen drawing. So we don't want to keep recreating these, so I'm just going to lock them. I'm going to lock them and I'm going to freeze them, and then we're going to set this by type. So there you see these, file 3, file 2, that's correct. So everything on there at first glance looks correct, basically. Probably the next one of the other things that I do this. It's just way that I work, really. I know it's a baluster, so take all your ticks off. That'll be channels because they're B's, they're columns because of that. BT is property, that's a gate. I find this quite handy to do, that's grating. Property. I don't need to keep opening that up actually. Grating. Modify. HR is handrail. I just name everything like this, just for assemblies. Kick flat. Damn you. And just work your way down your list. We've got several in here that are bracings, aren't we? So I'm just going to identify what they are. So select objects, show only selected, select objects, that's a brace, so the first two are bracings. Move flat, and hopefully this should come up as the kick flap, which they do. So if I had a lot of assemblies, and typically because I do secondary steel, it's not all stick and beam. What I do is I just work through these by name, doing my editing checks, rather than like just randomly doing it. If you set them up by mark number, you know, you can have a beam here, a column there, and channel there, and brace in there. And doing this just allows me to put them all together so that I can get into a rhythm when I'm going through checking my editing and stuff. As far as these are concerned, I just leave them as they are. I don't bother with single parts. They're pretty good actually at single parts. And that's pretty much it. They're ready for editing and issuing. Good luck, Sean.